Welcome to It's About Time Conversations with Charlize and Yolanda, where we bring our experiences and our expertise to the table to address relevant topics that impact our lives and our communities. And so, this is the place to be authentic, be transparent, and be inspired. So, welcome to our table. I'm Charlize Lewis.
And I'm Yolanda Mason. Thank you for joining us this week. Today, our topic is the necessity of self-care. So we're going to discuss why self-care is important, and then we're going to talk about the challenges that we face with self-care during the pandemic.
So we have with us today Miss Ashley Browning, who is the owner of Browning Enterprises, founder of So Loved, and creator of Self-Care Ain't Selfish. Ashley's one of my homegirls, pretty much from Kentucky State University, HBCU. And so she graduated from there and she was inducted into the 40 under 40. She has a lot of degrees, certifications, awards, and even a book in her portfolio. And I always call her the queen of business and the queen of community advocacy. She's always got a lot going on in her world, and I truly admire her work that she does in the community. And so some of her work is centers around self-care. And so she's embarked up on a new journey with that. So Ashley, talk to us a little bit about what is self-care and what is not self-care and why is it a necessity? And we talked earlier about a necessity versus a luxury.
Thank y'all first for having me. Thank you for this opportunity. So self-care is an engagement. It's not an escape. So a lot of times we think that we can unplug and we just might sometimes just see ourselves like just scrolling on Facebook or social media, and that's not really an unplug. So what I mean by engagement, and it's not an escape, is that you have to unplug unplug from your daily lives and connect to something bigger. So whether that's through prayer, through meditation, or connecting with your higher power. So and what I mean by it's not an escape, you still have to focus on what's going on around you and not just trying to forget it, because that's numbing and that's not what self-care. So that goes to my next point. So self-care is energizing and not numbing. So don't try to numb your pain because you just end up ignoring your needs. So be intentional about plugging in so that you know that your needs are being met. Also, I want to take the time to ask you all, do you all think that your self-care activities are energizing or numbing?
I don't know that they're either. To be perfectly honest, when I think about my self-care, I just want to rest. I just want to rest. And the resting is part of the unplugging side of that, not to be able to do anything and to be intentional about doing nothing or about intentional about doing whatever it is I want to do. And it's hard sometimes because I'm a mother and I'm also a wife. I also work a full-time job. I also have a part-time business. And so I really have to completely unplug from everything. And that also includes social media, because to me, that's not self-care. Social media can get you riled up, can get your heart racing. It can do those types of things. So that to me is not self-care. And sometimes really trying to just get some me time where I can just have some open space to think and to breathe. And sometimes that's just taking a walk and putting my earphones in.
Right. Anything for you, Yolanda?
I'm actually super intentional about self-care. And so for me, self-care is never numbing. I'm actually a social worker. And so coming from just the training that I've received and the certification, I know that self-care has to be intentional and it has to be something that's well thought out. So my self-care plans tend to be really thought out. It definitely includes rest, but mine usually centers around doing something that really makes me happy. So it is very energizing.
Yeah. And so I think that as we become, as Charlize mentioned, Some of us are mothers, some of us are wives, or just, in our career. Sometimes as we get older, we forget about what makes us happy, like you said. I think really in the pandemic, I realized I didn't have hobbies. So that was interesting to me, because I know, like, I have friends that may sew, friends that may write, paint, or whatever. And I was like, I don't think I have a hobby. And a lot of times when I go to get a massage, so your left side is your femininity side, and that side is always tense on me, right? So I know I always have a lot of masculine energy. So I think that trying to balance that, because masculine energy always comes out for me in work, work, work. And I always know that has always been a way that I overcompensate. In a lot of areas is to continue to work, 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 and go, go, go. And through my self-care experience, I am still learning that you have to take care of yourself. And like we said in the beginning, it's a necessity. It's not even a thought that self-care should be an option. And we treat self-care as an option. So that brings to my last point. Self-care is essential, it's not indulgent. So we often define self-care by activities. And self-care, like me and Charlize was saying earlier, is not, I gotta go get my feet done. Yes, that could be some of your quiet time and some of your relaxation time. But a lot of times when we do things like that, that is just maintenance. And then it's not always something that is self-care-ish. So being self-care is a deliberate practice of paying attention and taking the time to take care of yourself. And like you all said earlier, that word intentional comes back into play all the time. Like, you really have to be intentional. And one of the things that I struggle with is I'm very intentional, but I struggle with being present. And that goes back to my mind is always in that work, 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 work mode. So I am really focusing, and I think COVID is, helping me a lot in that aspect of being present, because before I didn't have to really be present, but now COVID has taught me a little bit about loving on those who care about me and inviting me to things they don't have to invite me to, even if it's just a event like this on Skype or Zoom, because I have to be present in this moment. Normally I would be thinking about what I got to do when I get off of this call. So being present and being intentional, I think, are very important. And one of the things, so with self-care, I always give myself a word. So my word for 2021 is grace. And I think a lot of times as women in general, we do not give ourselves grace. And what I mean by grace is it's okay to make a mistake. We have to be kind to ourselves. We have to be nice to ourselves, and give ourselves grace in areas that the world may not give us grace in. So that's one of my words for 2021 is to have grace, or grace in general, and however that applies or whatever that means for me, to give myself grace and not beat myself up about things that are beyond my control, or something that I even can control, but didn't get it done in a timely manner, or whatever it may be. Just allow myself that space to give myself grace.
That's good. And I think sometimes, even with being a woman in general, and especially a Black woman, we carry a lot on our shoulders. We carry a lot on our shoulders in our personal lives, in our churches, and in our workspaces. We carry a lot. And I remember when I was about 8 years old, I started playing the piano, and it got to a place where, of course, I got better at it and I was required to practice. But then there were times when I wasn't required to practice, and my mom started to connect that when I was super stressed, that I would go play the piano. And it started to be the thing that helped me self-soothe. And so I had to stop and think about self-soothing and the distinction between self-soothing and self-care. And to me, there's a distinction, because when I'm self-soothing, I'm trying to bring down my stress level or my anxiety level. But when it's self-care, I am really trying to nurture what is in me. And Yolanda, you talked about being, by profession, a social worker. And so you do work in social work, and you deal with a lot of clients with substance misuse. And so there's two aspects that I see from the self-care standpoint. You have to take care of the client and what is important for the client in terms of self-care. But then for you, the person who has to work with clients who are in these types of situations, how do you have self-care and trying to manage those two types of worlds? So I would say they're two different worlds.
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. I feel like the word that has made a difference for me when it comes to self-care, of course, as a social worker, self-care is all we talk about. We advocate for it. I've taken classes on it. I have a certification on it, but self-care in theory is a lot easier to achieve than self-care in practice in your daily life. I find that in my profession, the word that has made a very important difference for me is boundaries. I think that a lot of times what people forget, especially, and let me be more specific, especially for women of color, I think that we struggle sometimes with setting appropriate boundaries. And then the second thing that is difficult for us at times is holding space for ourselves. And so for me, it comes with being very, again, here's that catchword, intentional and very self-aware. So intentionality means that self-care is not an idea that looms somewhere out in the galaxy that I have to remember from time to time. Self-care is something that is on my calendar. So that's something that I've recently implemented. Self-care is on my calendar. Self-care is something that I do every week. Because I am a full-time graduate student, I have a full-time caseload. I am a minister. I have a business. I have so many things going on. Intentionality is key. So I'm intentional. It's on my calendar. And I've learned that setting boundaries with everyone is important. And a lot of times I think that we think about boundaries when we think about people that maybe are a little less than gracious with us, or people who are giving us a hard time. Boundaries is not just for problem solving. Boundaries is for everyone. Sometimes the boundary is just, excuse me, the ability to say no, and to let that no be a complete sentence. If the answer is no, it's just no. So setting boundaries is important alongside being intentional, but also holding space. And that involves being very self-aware. So self-awareness is when I hit that point of the day where I have seen 8 clients and it's 4:00 and I've taken on all of the things that come along with helping them to process through substance use disorder, which is a very complex diagnosis anyway. But just knowing that when I hit that moment where I'm starting to feel stressed, where I'm starting to feel triggered, it's holding space for myself. It's being self-aware enough to say, I need to stop now. Sometimes self-care is, it's noon and I'm going to take lunch and I'm not going to feel bad about it. Because I don't know about you ladies, but I've had those days where I feel bad even about taking a lunch break, because I'll think, oh, I have too much to do. Let me just grab a sandwich and keep on working or keep on seeing folks. But being intentional, being self-aware, and setting boundaries means that I have to call sometimes and say, okay, I'm going to take from 12 to 1 and I'm going to eat my lunch. I'm not going to inhale it, but I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to drink some water, and I'm just holding that space for myself and being aware of what I feel and what I need in any given moment.
Absolutely. You said something that just stuck out to me. You said no. Being able to say no and not to feel guilty about it, and no is a complete sentence. And here's the thing, I don't even have to explain to you why I told you no.
Mm-hmm.
I can say no and stop there, and that's enough.
Absolutely.
And if I set the appropriate boundaries, you won't even ask, right?
Exactly.
Because sometimes that's part of it. And so I want to kick it back to you, Ashley. Can you give us a few tips on self-care? I know you've taught several workshops on this.
So self-care, it encompasses 8 components. And the components of self-care are emotional, mental, physical, spiritual, social, financial, occupational, environmental. So as Yolanda was saying, you have to be intentional about your self-care. And of course, 8 is a lot of components, but they all kind of play into each other. So we know that if you're a lot of times, if your spiritual is out of whack, so are your emotions, or vice versa. So being intentional and realizing I need to do something in this area to switch or to align these other components. So some of the activities that I really, or some of the things that I focus on daily or try to be intentional about daily is, especially in a pandemic, is setting a routine. And I know that like a lot of times, a lot of us are virtual right now. So it's easy to get up and just roll over and go to your computer versus you getting up in the morning, making yourself breakfast, taking a shower. A lot of that has probably gone out of the window for a lot of people because people are sitting at home at their office. And so I had to really set a routine. So I make sure that I shower and put on clothes every day. Well, Monday through Friday at least. Because you can get really sad or really depressed that you haven't even showered, because you'll look up and realize it's 3 days later and you haven't been in the shower. It's so easy to do. So set that routine, making sure that you stay engaged with your families and friends during this time. So whether that is social media, whether that is video chat, video has really saved a lot of relationships during this time. In the summertime, I was able to have porch dates with my friends. So I would sit in a car and they would stay on the porch. So thinking, being creative of ways to stay engaged with people. One of my other things is making sure that you use your supports, whether that be friends, whether that be family, whether that be your doctor, your therapist, or whoever your pastor, whoever your support system is. And if you don't have one, make sure you identify who your support is. I think Ms. Charlize, I posted on Facebook recently about identifying who your 10 or less is in this season. So, if that's your mother-in-law, like Charlize said, or your sister, or whoever it may be, identify who those 10 people are. And that is your support system. So if anything happens, if you're having a bad day, you can pick up the phone and call them. Allowing yourself to check in with yourself. You know yourself better than anybody. So you know when you off, or you know when something ain't right. And sometimes we can't pinpoint it. That's normal, that's natural. But allowing yourself to be like, something is off today. Let me either unplug, let me meditate, let me pray, let me go for a walk, let me go to the gym, whatever your outlet is, do those things. And also, I think a lot of times, especially as women and women of color, we don't even know what the word pause means. A lot of times we are just go, 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 and we don't pause. So taking that moment to take a few deep breaths throughout the day. I do deep breathing all the time, and just breathing from your diaphragm, is definitely way different just normal breathing. So making sure you take that pause throughout the day. Some activities can include journaling, if that's your thing. So my therapist really helped me, because I now feel like I used to journal all the time as a kid. That was just my thing. I love to write, right? So as I got older, I felt like journaling became work. So I had to detach and figure out how it worked or how it would serve me best. So my therapist suggested that you video journal. So basically you hold your phone up or whatever you use to, record, and you can video yourself just talking or having a conversation pretty much out loud. You don't have to look at it. You can look at it if you want, or you can just store it in your memories. You can look at it, or you can just get rid of it. But once you release it, it's out. So that's something that's really helped me, as well as Yolanda said, I'm very intentional. I have a self-care day. I actually have two kind of. I have a Wednesday is my day to detach or unplug from work. I don't do any work on Wednesday. And then Saturday is my spiritual self-care day. So I observe the Sabbath. I don't do anything on Saturdays until sundown. So I've taken those moments to pause, and I think is very necessary. Yeah.
That's good. That's good. I need to I should have been writing this down, a lot of these things down, to be perfectly honest. I know for me, being able to just on a Saturday, I don't work. And like I said, I have a full-time job, but on Saturday, I'm not doing any work. I'm not doing for my full-time. I'm not doing for my part-time. And sometimes you tell people that and they still would try to intrude on that. They'll try to intrude on that day. And that's where Yolanda was talking about those boundaries. If I told you I'm not doing work on Saturdays, don't keep texting me. Don't keep emailing me, FaceTiming me, anything you're trying to do to connect with me on that day. And sometimes because we work so hard, we don't know how to turn off. Mm-hmm. We don't know how to even respect our own space or respect our own boundaries in situations like that. And so I've just had to learn to do that. I've had to learn. And like I mentioned before, I played the piano. And so I played the piano for my church for 30 years. Mm. So piano at some point was not that thing I did to de-stress, because after a while it became part of my job. Part of the thing I had to show up for and the thing I had to also get paid for, but it was another job. And so I stopped enjoying the thing that was supposed to be helping me relieve my stress. And so I actually retired after 30 years of that because my body couldn't take it. My mental space couldn't take it anymore, and I wasn't enjoying it. And so I had to be honest about, there are some things that can help you in your life if you just stop. It's okay to stop. That is self-care. Having good relationships around you is self-care, because some people will use the word toxic all the time, but it is so real and so true. You need nurturing relationships around you who can speak life into you and not drain you. That's part of self-care as well. Definitely. So, Yolanda, you have anything else you want to talk about? I know you have a self-care curriculum. Do you want to talk about any part of that?
I think the thing that I want to leave with folks who are listening or will be listening to this podcast is just that it's important to be self-aware and to know how you're feeling. To know what's happening in your mind, what's happening in your body. I was listening to Ashley's list, and it is such a great list because she talked about that emotional component, that spiritual component. So just being aware of all of that and responding, being prepared to respond accordingly when you need to set a boundary or when you need to hold some space for yourself to have self-care.
And we also didn't talk about get a therapist if you need it, or a counselor.
Absolutely. Shout out to my therapist.
So don't be,
I love my therapist.
Yes, don't be ashamed to get a therapist.
Absolutely.
And I tell people all the time, I need you to use the insurance you pay for.
Yes.
Because I get paid on the 15th and the 30th, and my insurance comes out. I have copays. I have a FSA spending card. All of those things you can use to get a professional therapist if you need that. If that's part of what you need for self-care. Don't be afraid to use what you're paying for.
Absolutely.
Here's the thing. You also need to invest in what's important to you. Mm-hmm. Right? I'll tell a person, if you can go out and get a $200 pair of tennis shoes, you can afford to go to the therapist. You can afford to go Well, I don't have any dental insurance. No, we do exactly what we want to do. And it's an
Absolutely.
investment. And we need to learn to invest in ourselves. That's part of self-care, investing in us and who we are. And so right now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to do a little round robin. Are y'all ready?
We ready?
Ashley, are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you just random questions, and you just give me the first answer that comes to mind. So, what is on your music playlist, Ashley?
India Reed stays on my playlist. She's my favorite.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's a no. Yeah, that's always.
So, Yolanda, what are you reading right now? Grad
You know what? I am reading a lot of textbooks.
Yes.
Because I am in my last semester of graduate school, but I will tell you what book I'm actually reading as well. I went back to a classic, Iyanla Vanzant's Yesterday I Cried. And it's a book that I just absolutely love her voice as a writer. I think that, especially for Black women, women of color, so much of what her life has entailed, we can all relate to. And so, yeah, I'm reading that book. That's a book that's really been blessing me for the last week. So, yeah.
So, Ashley, if you could go back in time and meet someone, who would it be?
First person that comes to my mind. I would love to sit down with. So can I do two people?
Yes.
I would love to sit down and talk to Malcolm and Martin.
Oh, wow.
That's good.
Good one.
And really, I think about the work that you do in the community. And so give me a quick little blurb about So Loved. We got to put So Loved out here.
Okay, so Loved is my nonprofit. It's my baby. We have been in existence since 2013. It actually was birthed in Kentucky, but I did not launch it until I moved to Ohio. It is a community-based project organization, which is a 501c3 organization where we give back to the community. Our focus is primarily people of color, and we meet issues such as food deserts, economic development, youth development, such as school systems and stuff like that. So making sure that people of color have what they need when they need it.
That's awesome.
It is. I've been watching that work for a while now, several years. Yolanda, what's your favorite movie?
Oh, that's a tough one. You know, there's so many great movies. I think one of my favorite movies lately, like in the last several years, is Selma. Directed by Ava DuVernay. And I think what I love about it is that it kind of chronicles the life of Dr. Martin Luther King, but it does so in a way that's incredibly different from the movies that we've seen before. We got to see the real Dr. King and got to see kind of into his life more. And so I love that movie. I love watching his relationships and everything about his family. I think she took a really intricate look at him. So I love that movie, Selma.
Thank you. So, Ashley, what's your favorite hobby?
I just told you I didn't have one, though. But my favorite thing to do probably right now is, let's see. When I lived in Kentucky, I played the guitar. So I'm training myself to get back into playing the acoustic guitar.
Oh, wow.
And really what I was going to ask you, what was your favorite self-care thing you do? And so is that the same thing?
It can be. But my favorite self-care right now, it changes monthly. But my favorite thing to do right now is, this is going to sound weird, but I love playing the Wii.
Wow.
Yeah.
I know I'm dating myself because I'm saying how old I am because the Wii not a thing anymore, but it's my time to just be me and enjoy me. So yeah,
and it's funny because I was thinking, where in the world is our Wii? I have no idea. But yeah, what's crazy about
bring it up and bring it back out in quarantine.
those two joysticks, I don't know if they're even called joysticks, which tell you how old I am. They're sitting over there on the corner of the dresser right now, but I have no idea what the actual machine is. I have
Right.
no idea. I haven't seen it in years. I know I haven't.
Yeah, I
So-
think it came out in like 07. So yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. We've been in this house for 3 or 4 years. I haven't seen it since we moved here. So maybe we have it, maybe we don't. I really don't.
Find it, pull it out, and have. I bet y'all have tons of fun.
I'll have to ask my husband what box did he pack that in and where does the box fit? I have no idea. So are there any closing remarks or any advice you want to give to our listeners as they're trying to be intentional about their own self-care?
So for me, I think my advice is to realize that self-care is a journey. So it's something that it's not about getting your hair, your nails done. It's not about that. It is really work on yourself. And it's a process to figuring out you, to the totality of you. It's the process of you becoming whole, you becoming healed. So know that it's not going to happen overnight. It's a continuous thing. It's continuous work. Just as long as you get that routine in place, you'll be fine.
That's good. That's good. Yolanda?
Mine is more of a reminder for our listeners. So I just want to remind us, especially those of us who are women, that self-care doesn't just happen. If you are waiting to have time for self-care, it may never happen. So be very intentional and put self-care on your calendar. Choose a day. You may not be able to choose a day at first, but even if you can choose an hour, like if you can just choose a time that you can set aside for self-care every single week and then kind of step it up as you create more time in your schedule. But whatever you do, just be very intentional and make sure that self-care is on your calendar.
That's good.
Yeah.
All right, Yolanda, do you want to close us out?
So first of all, I just want to say thank you to Ashley because like you brought up some amazing points about self-care and you reminded me of some things that I really needed, especially now. Again, being in my last semester of graduate school, I needed some of the reminders. And so I just really appreciate you being here. And thank you for the tips that you've given us. I will definitely be using them. And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us today as we continue to shape our dialogue around real life issues and real talk solutions. You can find and subscribe to our podcast on Anchor, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Pocket Cast, and Radio Public. Join us next time as we strive to be authentic, be transparent, and be inspired.